Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of the Bell Falls Search Focus on Talent video series. This is the Digital Marketing Edition. Each week, we interview proven leaders to learn from their experiences and share stories with all of you. Our mission is to promote the accomplishments of our guests, highlight the companies where they work, and talk about the products and the services that they offer, share success stories from those experiences, and most importantly, provide strategies for job seekers and advice to talent seeking to accelerate their careers. Today's guest is a friend of mine, a proven marketing executive with experience in companies such as AOL and American Express. She's one half of a power marketing couple from Northeast Ohio. I'd like to welcome Felicia Chiles, Director of Marketing from First Energy. Felicia, welcome.
Thanks, Ron. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure to see you again. It's been a while, but I'm glad that we could share some of your stories with my listeners.
Happy to.
So if you don't mind, I mean, I know I give a brief intro, but can you talk about, introduce yourself, reintroduce yourself, talk about your current role, and most importantly, talk about the career evolution you've gone through to get where you're at today.
Sure. So you're right. I am the Director of Marketing at First Energy, but more specifically, First Energy Products and Services, which is, I think the best way to describe it is an innovation arm within First Energy in an effort to try to expand our relationship with our existing customer base in a way that is different, in a way that we can start to introduce products and services to make their homes, work better, more comfortable, more safe and secure from a brand that they already trust. So that's essentially the role that I have today. We're essentially an e-commerce company. We have a website called First Energy Home. And, so there's a lot of principles within e-commerce that, apply here for a company that is 100 years old and has done business in a very different way for a very long time. So prior to coming here, as you said, I started my career at America Online in the day when it was called America Online, and then moved into American Express, all of which I've spent a lot of time in customer acquisition. And, either for AOL, for, subscription acquisition within America Online, both for new card acquisition, and then also on the customer side, upsell and cross-sell. All within the digital realm. And it's proven to be a really good way. It's been a very, very valuable experience. One, from an AOL perspective, to be really on the ground floor of digital marketing and to learn as it grew and as it moved. And then to be at an organization like American Express that was marketing driven and had a lot of resources to put at my disposal to learn a lot about that space. And so from a career progression perspective, those two things, really have put me in the situation of being able to take a leadership role at like a First Energy that's also trying to break into a new space.
Gotcha. The burning question is, how many of those AOL CDs do you have stacked up somewhere?
There is absolutely a box in the basement that has a lot of AOL CDs, some of which were tests that we put out in market, in direct mail, that seem to move with us every single time we move. I can't seem to get rid of them. I don't know why.
I wonder if you could sell those on eBay or something like that at this point. They'll be a collector's item eventually. So,
yeah.
Well, thank you for that. That's very helpful. From your experiences, can you talk about, a case study or two, referencing a project or an accomplishment that you were pretty proud of, or that would be a great example of, kind of soup to nuts application of your marketing expertise?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot of things happened at American Express. And I think, as a candidate, I think one of the things to start to evaluate when you think about an organization that made American Express really valuable to me, actually, as an individual and as a professional, is that they had a high tolerance for innovation. And I think anytime you're in an organization that allows you to innovate, you learn so much and it gives you that space. So a great example of that is that while I was at AOL, and that now this is going to date myself, but we did one of the first programmatic ad buys within the advertising space. And what Amex did that was really, really great is that there was an expectation that we were innovating within the space, which I think is really good for organizations to do, because it actually forces people to take risks where normally, we all tend to be a little bit risk averse. But they also allowed us to spend money in a way where, we knew we were going to lose money initially in this, and everybody accepted it. Because while we had to figure out that space, we had to understand, how to buy cookies, how to place cookies, how to start to identify audiences, how to start to evaluate those ad buys really early on, which meant, we were going to fail a lot, and we were probably going to waste a lot of money. Now, there was a limitation on how much we were willing to waste. But ultimately, what was, a very small portion of the buy became, 70, 80% of the buy, I think, by the time I rolled out of that part of the organization. But, to be able to figure that out, to be able to have really great agency resources also to help figure that out was transformational to the business, and something I'm very proud of. But I think as a candidate, that's something to interview for, is an organization's tolerance for risk and their tolerance for innovation is something that makes you better as a professional.
Understood. Okay. Well, is there another one that you'd like to share?
I think the other one is, the other thing that I was able to work on more, also within American Express, is that we developed some of the first, what we called instant membership, customer experiences. So an experience where we would deliver an electronic card number to you upon approval, upon digital approval. And what is interesting about that, and what was really innovative about that, is that, it gets people spending. American Express, not surprising, is a spend-centric model. So how to use acquisition principles to start to think about, how do you start to make your acquisition move a little bit further? How do you make it a little bit more valuable? Those are the things that it isn't just what you bring in on the front end, but it's also how do you start to build that value on the other side? And how do you immediately start to bring somebody into, a new organization, a new subscription, a new relationship in a way that gets them involved very, very quickly. But we did everything from the technology roadmap to the user interface to, what were people comfortable with in terms of, delivering a card to them. Do they feel like it was secure? Is it something they actually felt like was valuable to them? So a lot of really interesting learning from that, but also a lot of interesting UX learning from how do you take somebody through what could potentially be a really complicated situation and make it feel good, not confusing, secure, and feel like it made sense. So it was, it was really, and I actually signed up for a new card the other day and actually got thrown into the flow. So it was nice to know there's still
Probably some of the flow you once established when you were there.
There's a lot of it that looked very, very familiar. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's actually a really good transition. You've been in financial services, you've been in, I'll say, technology, you've worked in professional services, big companies, small companies. You've clearly been on the cutting edge at least a couple times of kind of new additions to marketing and digital marketing. For talent, or I would say students in kind of the entry level category, still in college or maybe 1 or 2 years, into the workforce, what are you seeing as the kind of the newer trends within marketing, and what would you suggest to that segment of the talent market, as far as how to best prepare and think about from a career perspective?
I think for any candidate, I think, preparation is obviously really, really important. One of the things that I think as digital marketers, we're starting to recognize is a lot of the importance of content marketing. Content marketing has become something that is extraordinarily valuable, and making sure that, that is what can differentiate you as a brand. We're starting to use it in a way that we can actually quantify it, and we can start to understand the value of it. I think that was some of its challenge at first. I think we all knew we needed to have good content, but I think it was hard to actually put a price tag on it and say, well, this is what it actually does for me. And not surprising, like everything in digital marketing, the tools and resources, start to follow some of the consumer trends sometimes, so that as marketers, we can start to talk about it more. But, we'll have roles on our team that are specific to content marketing that I never had on a team recently, or, in the past, that now it's absolutely a need and something we definitely invest in.
Yeah, and I found, and I'd love your opinion too. And it's not just copywriting; it's not just like you said, writing content. It needs to have a acknowledgement of data behind it as well, of measurement of
Sure.
ROI. Correct?
Sure. We know that, different purchases have different purchase cycles, and they have a different research cycle associated with them. Some products are more or less considered. Those things that are more considered have a longer timeline. And we need to acknowledge that, and you need to allow your customer to know that they go through a journey in terms of, first being aware, then understanding, and before they convert. And the more you can start to be present as part of that journey, the more likely you are to capture that sale and to capture that trust.
Yep.
And so, yes, what are those tools that help you understand how long that journey is? Right. So you should understand that, and then understand what is the customer's mindset as they go through it. And can you have content that starts to answer those questions and starts to make them feel more comfortable? Again, the higher consideration your purchase, the more that journey becomes really important in understanding it. Things that, are essentially the moral equivalent of gum at the checkout, who cares? You don't have to invest as much there, but, those things that are higher price point, more of a commitment, those are those things that you have to really nurture that customer relationship. And that's where content becomes really critical.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you for that example.
Sure.
How about, as a hiring manager, if you put that hat on, how would you, or what would you suggest to candidates to differentiate themselves, to get into the interviewing process, and then within the interviewing process? What have you seen that works well?
I think being, sometimes, every candidate is as good as how well the job description is written. And I see a lot of really terrible job descriptions. And I think it's hard as a candidate to try and figure out what the job actually is. I think what is important for candidates to recognize is that they can interview as well, and ask for that clarity when you first start out, because your answers should be in the context of what you understand the role to be. So don't be afraid to ask some questions at the beginning to make sure that you understand what the role is. We write job descriptions, we try to be thoughtful, but, let's face it, it happens, when you have 5 minutes on your schedule, and sometimes I go out and I'll look back on it and think like, oh God, how would anyone know what this was? And, so don't be afraid to do that. Listen, a more prepared candidate will sometimes have an edge, sometimes even be over somebody who is even more experienced. If those things are even, somebody that actually demonstrated to me that they were interested enough in a role to do the research to try and understand what our challenges are, even if, like, from an outside, looking in, you'll never totally understand it, but you made the effort. And that to me tells me that you're excited about the role, because having somebody who's excited about the role is better than somebody who's experienced all day long.
Yep. And shows they've done their research and they care about where they're trying to go.
Because that also tells me how they're going to approach their job.
Yep. So I've been looking forward to this question as it specifically relates to you, given our past relationship and experience, kind of chatting. Although you were from this area, you were primarily working outside the region, and I know you came back and wanted to focus on not being on a plane so much, if you don't mind me putting words in your mouth. And had to introduce yourself to the Cleveland market. And I know that took a little bit of time. Can you share that experience with kind of the segment of people watching this video that maybe have been in the market for a while or looking for their next thing? What did you learn during that experience, and what was the biggest success you had at kind of entering into a role here in Northeast Ohio?
I think,
any market for that sake.
Yeah, I think in particular, kind of reintroducing myself into Northeast Ohio, one of the things I did, which was not necessarily, didn't initially feel natural to me, and that was to take a role that maybe wasn't exactly the right fit, but had other aspects that I needed for my next role.
Sure.
So not to think of it as I had to come in and I had to find exactly the right role when I started to do that, but to find a role that would, in this particular case, it was an agency role. And it was to look for something that would give me exposure to actually a lot of employers to the area. For me, culture is a really big fit. It is really important for me. It gave me the ability to see a lot of different cultures and a lot of different organizations that, while are very, very successful and really great places to work, they wouldn't necessarily be great for me.
Mhm.
And, understanding the kind of work that they had, the kind of challenges that they had. And it gave me that ability. So while being in the agency side was not something I intended to stay in, it was very deliberate to get me to my next role. It wasn't about my end all be all.
Yep.
And
Well,
so, yeah, so go ahead.
no. Well, the thing I wanted to add to that is, and it's because I think, I know you pretty well. I've seen lots of people make that decision and viewed it as a stepping stone. I would say, I know you, and I know you didn't mail it in either. You gave it your all.
Oh, yeah.
And you made the most of that, and for the business you were working with. And I just see too many people kind of say, oh, well, I'm going to do this for a couple of years and then it'll get me to my next thing. That doesn't count. You still have to go full go.
No, I figured if at the worst, it actually accomplished what I needed it to accomplish, but at best, it actually became a career opportunity that I didn't expect.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Yep.
And yeah, you're right. I did give it my all, but yeah, I'm definitely, I'm a client side girl and much happier where I am right now.
All right, cool. Well, thank you for that.
Sure.
Well, I think that hits on all the points I wanted
Great.
to cover. I greatly appreciate your time and can't wait to share this with my listeners, and look forward to catching up again soon.
Absolutely. Anytime. Happy to do it.
Thank you, Felicia. Take care.
All right. You too.